Well, hey everybody. So today I wanted to do a quick video about using Graxpert, which is a gradient removal tool. And it's not new. It's been out for, I think, a little over a year. But it is new to me, and I thought that I'd go ahead and share my experience with you today. And perhaps you've already checked it out, but if not, this might be of interest to you, just to introduce you to the software. And it's freely available, definitely worth a try. I think it does a fantastic job. So, with that said, hang out, check this out, and see if you like it for yourself. So my name is Doug, and this is AstroAF. All right, so what is Graxpert? Well, first, it was created by Frank Sockenheim, and he had a development team of Stefan, David, and Christian, whose last names that I do not know. The application is designed to remove gradients from deep sky images, and it was born on Discord, actually, in their channel called Dark Matters. And it was the brainchild of Frank who brought it to the Discord group, and basically within 3 days the development team had found 3 algorithms that would be suitable for meeting the needs of the application. 3 months later they actually had a working application that they then began to distribute. It is available on Windows, Mac, and Linux, and you can download it for free at graxpert.com. So basically, to kind of start off from the beginning, what's a gradient? It's a gradual change in brightness, usually caused by external interferences. It's not part of the actual deep space image, and things that can cause gradients are light pollution, differences in brightnesses of the night sky itself from the moon, or other light sources. Some poor calibration frames like flats, for example, could also introduce gradients. So removing gradients is really important to the quality of the final object image. So Graxpert is just uniquely designed to do this. It is a standalone application. It is not a plug-in for any other applications. Now, there are other applications out there like Siril and PixInsight and such that have background removal tools, background extraction. Graxpert is a standalone application, as I said, and its sole purpose is just to focus on removal of gradients. So I use Siril, so why would I want to use Graxpert? Well, I think it's easiest if I show you this. So let me get over to Siril, and I will open up an image. So if we go to, this is actually the image of the Veil Nebula that I just did in my last video. I'll post a link up top here. Siril has a background extraction tool, which is exactly for removing gradients. And if I take this out of linear and put it into histogram, we can see. And yeah, it is full of gradient here. The problem that I have is if I set a grid here, which I'll just go ahead and do, and now I've got a grid set. If I can add and modify the grid in any way, except I cannot remove. So if I have a grid point that is like here, I'd like to remove that. So if I right click on this to remove it, Siril will crash. It's a bug in this version, which is 1.2.0-RC1. That's the release candidate. Apparently, I looked on their issues on, I don't think it's GitHub, can't remember. But anyway, over in the repository issue is a known bug and is supposed to be fixed in the final version of Siril 1.2.0. But it hasn't been released, and it's been months, and I cannot remove a grid item here. And I'll show you. So if I right-click on this, there, it just crashed. So that's very frustrating, and not being able to remove one of the samples is just really a bummer. And so I have to start with very little grid automatically flowed for me, and then spend a bunch of time going through and manually setting all the samples. So over here in Graxpert now, what we have is a really simple user interface. It is designed for going through a series of steps, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 down here for saving your files. Prior to the first step, you have an option to crop. So cropping is not on. So I want to turn on crop mode because the first thing I want to do is crop out my stacking artifacts. So I'll turn on crop mode, and then I can just grab corners and set my crop. And you definitely want to do this first. I have found that it really messes up your background if you have stacking artifacts that remain in your image. And I think that this looks pretty good. So I'll go ahead and crop this there. So apply crop. Okay, so my image is cropped. So now, so in Graxpert, you can click and drag your image around. You can't do that in Siril. You can also zoom out and in. I'm using a trackpad, but you do use if you're using a mouse, then you'd use your mouse wheel. And that's also something that you can do in Siril, but it's kind of, you don't have any control over the centering of your image when you zoom in. I found that to be inconvenient. So I've already loaded the image. That would be your first step. So you'd click load image and then navigate to find your image and open it up here in Graxpert. They recommend that you set your stretch options to 30%. You have options for no stretch, or 10%, 15, 20, or 30%. I will choose 30%. Saturation, I'll just leave it 1. So the next one is for sample selection, and this is basically setting your grid points. So display points is on. I'll leave flooded generation here for just a second. We'll come back to that. Points per row 16 seems to be appropriate as I've messed around with this a little bit. Grid tolerance here, I'm going to bring this down. My initial grid tolerance of about -0.4, -0.5 seems to work pretty well for me for a first run here, and I can go ahead and click on Create Grid. Okay, so it created grid for me here, and I'm going to do some work on this, and I think I'm actually going to lower my tolerance some more. So we'll bring that down to maybe 1, and I'll go ahead and create grid again. And that cleaned up some of these here. I'm going to run through and do some cleanup, and then, so here I'll show you the flooded generation. So if I enable flooded generation here, and now I'm going to bump up my grid tolerance. I don't know, let's try about 3.5. So what this does, where I click, it chooses to set additional points than the one that I click based on the luminosity of what I click on, and also how many based on the grid tolerance. So if I'm up at 3.5, I can probably, yeah, that's probably good. So if I click down here, it just added several more for me, and I can keep going, and it will keep adding more, okay? And it's basically setting selections based on the same luminosity of what I'm selecting, and that does a good job. If I go over here, anyway, that's just a really nice way to fill in. I'll take flooded off now, and I can just fill in a couple additional ones. I can go around and you can take whatever time you need on this for this demo here. I won't go too far overboard, but I do feel like there's some more that need to be set around here. So I will set them. And now for removal, I do want to take these out. So I'm right-clicking on these to remove them because I really don't want anything in this area in the middle at all because of the nebulosity that's there. So we'll just clean this up. I'm going to move that one. So you can click on a grid point and move it, which is really nice. Yeah, you get the idea. Let me just make sure that I've got this off the nebulosity here. Okay, I think that looks pretty good. And so we can set our smoothing here. I'm not sure, I think the default was 1. So I'm just going to leave it there, and but then I can show you there's 3 different calculation methods. RBF is the default, and I think it's recommended. It is kind of medium weight as far as computational intensity, But I think it only takes about maybe 20 seconds or so to actually run through and calculate the gradient removal. Splines is for really simple gradients across an image, and probably not appropriate for like a deep space object or something. But if you had some other object that had a simple gradient in it, then splines would, and it's fast, so that's the benefit of splines. Kriging is the most computational intensive algorithm, and for me, I think RBF is probably just fine. Smoothing is the transition of gradient removal between these grid items, and I think I'll just leave it there at 1. And so the next step then is to calculate the background. Okay, so the gradient removal completed there in just a few seconds. This allows us to look at the original and then go ahead and look at the processed. And then we can also just see the background only. So this was the gradient that was removed. If we go to processed, then at this point I can back this down to a reasonable stretch. And let's see, over here in the advanced sides, these items under interpolation, I'm not going to even begin to pretend to be able to explain this to you, but this is different mathematical algorithms that that can be added to the process. The interface one here, you can select your language, and then your scaling here. This is related to the scale of like text size and basically the UI itself. If you do change this, you'll have to restart Graxpert in order for that change to take effect. And at this point, you're able to save. And while I'm not going to actually save, I can show you. You can choose how you want to save it. So you can save it either as a TIFF or FITS or an XISF, which I think that is like PixInsight, in either 16 or 32-bit for any of those formats. And then you can save the background only. I think that in some applications, then you can take the background in and then subtract it. That's something I haven't done before. That might be like a PixInsight type of feature. You can save the processed image, which is this, which is what I did, or you can save it stretched in process, which if you're taking it over to your another application like Siril or PixInsight or whatever, you're probably going to do your stretching there. So it may be best to just send out the linear image back and save that. So basically you'll be saving this back, which has the gradient removed out of the linear image. And that is pretty much Graxpert. So I hope you like this demo. And pretty simple. It works really well. At this point, when I save it back, I would just go back to my processing application and open up. I will show you what it does create. So back in my work directory, it creates the same file. I didn't save it here. Sorry. If we go to pictures, so those went into this one. There we go. And yeah, there we go. So out of your result file, it creates it appends the name Graxpert to your output file. And anyway, then you can go back in and select that in your processing application to be the one that you want to choose to continue editing with. Okay, so that's pretty much it. Hope you enjoyed this demo, and appreciate you hanging out. If you like this video, please like and subscribe. Much appreciated. Definitely helps. I'd like to be able to reach more people and grow my audience. So you can help me do that, by commenting if you have any questions, or hit that like button. So thanks very much. I appreciate it. Take care.